welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez in Quito, and this is From the South. President Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela joined hundreds of delegates for the closing of the World Anti-Imperialist Forum in Caracas. 52 countries were represented in the meeting, but as the President Maduro explained, 400 delegates arrived of more than 1,300 guests who had confirmed their attendance. The rest were prevented from traveling to Venezuela as the United States has threatened airlines with sanctions and made it increasingly difficult for U.S. citizens to travel to Venezuela or for people to use U.S. airports to get there. President Maduro said that the empire knows the importance of international solidarity meetings such as these. Nevertheless, anti-representatives of movements from the United States to Syria were present.
Tenemos derecho a la unión.
We have the right to unity. We have the right to joint coordinated action. We have the right to a new world, and a new world is possible. We will not allow ourselves to be blackmailed. We have our cause, we have love and passion. And the world is saying that savage neoliberal capitalism has been exhausted. I saw some surveys conducted in the capitalist world, in Europe, in the West, and in the United States. And 61% of the population said that capitalism failed. They said that capitalism had been depleted and that we must look for another model for the world. And we are the vanguard of the new model that humanity will build in order to do away with savage capitalism. Neoliberal capitalism. Here is the hope of humanity, here at this world meeting for peace, sovereignty and life.
Aquí está a mi lado, a la izquierda.
Here, sitting to my left, is a man who was a good friend of our commander Chavez and beloved by him. He was with us all of the times we went to the bilateral summits in Syria. We traveled by land to all of the roads and towns of Syria, with Chavez at the wheel, and this man was sitting next to him. I'm so happy. I haven't seen him in many years, and I thank President Bashar al-Assad for sending us this great man and good friend of ours. Mossem Bilal, member of the Central Committee of the Ba'ath Arab Socialist Party of Syria. My good friend, we have a lot of memories with Chavez. This man could make a documentary on it.
Querido amigo, tenemos grandes recuerdos con el
The United States activist Terry Matson of Code Pink participated in the event.
The energy is just so positive, and this is why I come back, and this is all a part of your story that is so important to bring back to the United States and share with U.S. citizens. It's your story that is not being heard in the U.S. media.
On the second day of the World Forum Against Imperialism, thousands marched in Caracas in support of the Bolivarian Revolution and to send a global message for peace.
A march in Caracas showcased the strength of Venezuela's popular movements for international delegates who are taking part in the World Forum Against Imperialism. Many lauded the power of the Chavista people and their will to continue forward with the Bolivarian Revolution.
People from around the world have come here to help us highlight that we are a sovereign, peaceful nation and we are willing to resolve our own issues without outside interference. We don't want an empire to intervene.
We will show the world how wrong media reports are about Venezuela. We are not at war, we are at peace.
At the same time, discussions were ongoing in the forum with indigenous people, Afro-descendants, feminist groups and worker unions taking part. The recent history of Venezuela is one of the main debates.
These people sent a strong message. We stand with Commander Maduro, with the Bolivarian Revolution. We stand here willing to fight and we will never again be stomped on.
We want them to understand that Venezuela supports Nicolás Maduro and rejects the imperialist sanctions by the United States.
January 23rd also marked the civic military movement that overthrew the government of Marcos Pérez Jiménez in 1958.
We are a nation of peace. That's why on January 23rd we say to the people, you cannot give up. We are sovereign.
But also, 1 year ago, lawmaker Juan Guaidó proclaimed himself president. But time quickly unveiled The right's plot for a coup, which all failed miserably since they completely ignored the power of the people.
He is a puppet. He is being used by international lackeys who want to destroy our people. He even lost any integrity or humanity. He has no personality. He is nothing but a puppet.
The debates in the forum continue, with the goal of creating a united strategy to face off against a common enemy.
More than 1 million people in Iraq rallied in Baghdad on Friday to demand an end to the U.S. occupation of their lands. People marched waving flags, with their nation's flags, and chanting slogans against the United States and its presence in the Middle East. On January 5th, the Iraqi parliament voted for all foreign troops, in particular over 5,000 U.S. forces, to leave the country after nearly 17 years of military occupation. The decision came after a U.S. drone attack killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani on January 3rd.
Iraqis are rallying in a million-strong march for sovereignty, which has been violated for the past 16 years by U.S. forces and other foreigners. We are rallying to stand in the face of any foreign interference and to impose Iraq's sovereignty.
The people want the occupation to be over. The people don't want the occupation. It is a million-strong march for the sovereignty of Iran and to be united.
Mexican immigration authorities have detained 800 migrants from Honduras and El Salvador after they crossed the Suchiate River from Guatemala into Mexico. This is the second group of migrants to cross the river this week, after Mexican authorities denied them safe passage through their territory. Once on the other side of the Suchiate River, the migrants formed a column and began a trek on foot to Ciudad Hidalgo, where they were eventually detained by the National Guard. Over the last year, the Mexican government has implemented tougher restrictions on the migrant caravans in response to threats by the U.S. president to punish them with tariffs if they don't control migration flows through their territory. We have more stories coming up, so join us again in a minute. Welcome back. More stories at this hour. WHO spokesperson Tarik Jasarevic said there might be undetected cases that can rise on the spread of the new coronavirus due to a number of people that have already been infected in China. So far, at least 26 people have died, with 830 confirmed cases of the virus. The illness originated in the city of Wuhan, but has since spread to at least 13 other districts, forcing the government to lock down those areas. And this new virus could become a global emergency. That's according to a professor of infectious disease epidemiology, which contradicts earlier reports by the World Health Organization.
And quite quickly, the WHO decided that they didn't have enough information as of this week to formally declare it. The thing they're looking for now is for chains of transmission outside China. So obviously we have an epidemic ongoing in Hubei province, centered around Wuhan, and we've had these scattering of cases in places like Thailand, the US, and elsewhere. What determines the rate at which it will spread is the incubation time. It's called the generation time, the time between infections. We don't know that number yet, but it's clearly relatively short. It's perhaps a few days, perhaps 10 days. Some people are saying 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we can expect to see a multiplication in the number of cases if an epidemic is underway.
Meanwhile, China has started constructing a special emergency hospital to treat the coronavirus. The new hospital is being built in the Kaidan district in western Wuhan and is expected to be completed in 6 days. It is designed to have an area of 25,000 square meters with 1,000 beds and will be put into use by February 3rd. And a few countries have confirmed cases of the virus, including Thailand with 4, South Korea with 3, Vietnam with 2, and Singapore and the United States with 1 each. On January 25th, most of Asia begins celebrating the Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival. The event is marked by family gatherings and historical traditions, but this year's festivities are being affected by the spread of pneumonia cases.
This Saturday, China welcomes the most important celebration of its millenary culture. Festivities last around 15 days, and nationals spend time with their family and friends.
For the Chinese New Year, we buy special ornaments and pictures for good luck. We gather as a family, we eat together, we talk.
The Chinese zodiac is divided into 12 blocks, each represented by an animal, and every lunar year is characterized by one of them. According to legend, the animals participated in a race to attend a banquet organized by the Jade Emperor. This year's animal is the metal rat, believed to signal good fortune.
This is the year of the rat. The rat is the first of the 12 signs of the Chinese zodiac, so it begins a new cycle and will bring wealth and prosperity.
During these festivities, the streets and people's homes are decorated with red lanterns and murals with messages wishing good luck. Traditional styled parades are common.
It is very important to us. We decorate using red lanterns, flags, and typical Chinese nuts to attract good fortune.
This time around, these popular traditions and trips to visit family to mark the Lunar New Year have been tainted. This, as many are concerned about the spread of the coronavirus that has caused the death of at least 26 people and infected more than 800 across the country.
In Bolivia, social movements and the MAS party have formally accepted the candidacies of former Minister of Economy Luis Arce and former Foreign Minister David Choquehuanca as candidates for president and vice president.
A National Assembly of Leaders of the Movements Towards Socialism Party and Bolivia's main social organizations resolved to accept the candidates to represent them in May's national elections, while also validating their trust in David Choquehuanca as candidate for vice president.
The people will unite with the candidacy of our brother David Choquehuanca as vice president of the plurinational state of Bolivia. Brother David, congratulations.
These organizations have proposed Choquehuanca as the candidate for president, but last week in Buenos Aires it was announced that he would be the candidate for vice president, while the former Minister of Finance Luis Arce would run for president, something that which caused unease in some social organizations.
Social movements took care of unity, took care of our political instrument. They decided to offer a true alternative in these elections, so that our process of change continues. As such, they have decided to accept David Choquehuanca as vice president for the unity and the interests of the country.
It was Choquehuanca himself who convinced the social movements to accept the candidacies as they were announced, and called on them to maintain unity and to work to win the elections on May the 3rd.
Uruguay's President-elect Luis Lacalle Pou met with members of his conservative coalition this week to discuss an emergency law that would allow him to start his administration before being officially sworn in.
Saving time and solving issues quicker. That's the incoming government's motto, led by President-elect Luis Lacalle Pou. This week, the president-elect submitted a bill to his conservative coalition with more than 450 articles in it, presenting the policies that will be applied by his government over the next 5 years.
This emergency law is valuable procedure. I think it's very important because it allows us to move forward in many aspects. I believe that it also has the advantage of speeding up the legislative process.
The bill includes measures in matters of economy, security, labor, and education. For example, a fiscal rule that will adjust public expenses by more than $1 billion per year. There is also the abolition of financial inclusion, a law of legitimate defense by the military and police, a law that allows armed forces to down suspicious aircrafts, the demonopolization of fuel and fuel byproducts imports, a reform of public companies and of the education system, cuts in social and public spending, and the non-renewal of thousands of public officials' contracts.
In general, I would say there's a huge correlation between the subjects that are being proposed. Many of them are of common sense. Many of them were proposed by several political parties that now build up the ruling coalition up, and I would say that these laws show our commitment to the people.
But workers beg to differ. For the president of Uruguay's Workers' Union, Fernando Pereira, if the government fulfills its campaign promises by adjusting public spending and modifying several social programs, then a response will come in the form of social upheaval.
If this happens, we definitely have to be prepared, because the results will be negative, especially for workers. And this is entirely based on what La Cao said during the campaign. Let's hope that the president-elect and his cabinet have an open mind to modify some of their proposals.
The incoming government will submit the law of urgent consideration to Parliament as soon as it takes office on March the 1st. After that, Parliament will have 90 days to approve the bill. But for popular movements, they foresee 3 months of struggle to prepare for the neoliberal onset that won the elections.
El Salvador's FMLN party is celebrating the life of Commander Shafiq Jorge Andal, as today marks 14 years since his passing in 2006. Shafiq was a founder of the Farabundo Martí National Front in 1980 and one of the builders of the FMLN party in 1995. The combatant was part of the General Command of the guerrilla organization, which led the revolutionary struggle during the Salvadoran armed conflict, until the signing of the peace accords in 1992. He's remembered for his fight against the pro-imperialist oligarchy and a hero for Salvadoran revolutionaries. We'll take a short break now, but don't go away. Thank you for joining us again. The Nicaraguan government has for years promoted initiatives for the creation of small businesses, which in turn have led to the creation of thousands of jobs. We have more in this report.
11 months ago, Ania Peralta, a student and entrepreneur who works with recycled metal, along with 3 of her family members, decided to create a miniature replica of a Jeep as a family project. From this, the idea for their business venture was born.
This has been a highly successful enterprise, and in the short term, I see myself exporting my products so that people know us internationally and that they can see that in Nicaragua we can do amazing things.
These kinds of projects are known as creative economy and is a new trend in Nicaragua as people try to start their own businesses, something that has been promoted by the government of President Daniel Ortega, who doubled down on his efforts to help Nicaraguans since the failed coup attempt of April 2018.
In 2019 alone, close to 12,000 new jobs were created, mainly in the areas of tourism, gastronomy, manufacturing, and others. And already in the first 20 days of 2020, there have been 700 new ventures, and that will only help vitalize the economy.
Experts say that it's important for Nicaragua that doors start opening for small and medium businesses, which represent over 60% of the country's economy.
These businesses generate the most employment, as large companies are relatively sparse in Nicaragua. So it's the smaller enterprises that are helping the economy. They are creating, producing, planting, harvesting. This year, we'll see the growth of dairy production, of small cattle ranchers. And this matters because it guarantees that products will be readily available.
Authorities have set goals for 2020, which include helping cultural and creative industries, which are broadening the nation's identity.
The South African State Capture Commission inquiry into former President Jacob Zuma has applied for an extension of hearings up to December. Chairperson Justice Ray Sondo said the extension was meant to allow more time to conclude the hearings on the corruption case against Zuma and the co-accused Indian business family, the Guptas.
He was the head of state, and certain allegations have been made, in regard to him. And it would be important that one hears that evidence. But if for whatever reason he were we were to finish our work without him appearing, I'll make my findings based on the evidence of everyone else.
Human rights defenders from around the world have rolled out a campaign to fight growing global inequality at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The campaign, themed Fight Inequality, is held annually on the sidelines of the forum to highlight the gap between the rich and the poor. The forum has often been criticized for focusing on the world's wealthy while neglecting the existing inequality in human rights and resource sharing.
Truly fighting inequality would require a relook and a reformulation of our economic system to make sure that the planet, that communities, that people, women, the youth, people living with disabilities are part of the equation and not really being left behind, not being sacrifice at the altar of making profit.
In 2020, we are facing the reality of tipping points in both the climate crisis and increases in inequality around the world. This is a double emergency that affects billions, and people are connecting the dots. Protesters are marching en masse, often led by young people, women, and social movements on the front lines of these crises. And they are not marching solely about climate or inequality, they are standing up to the injustice of both.
Thousands of French workers joined a protest in Nantes on Friday against the reform to the country's pension system. Workers have vowed to continue nationwide movements against a pension bill proposed by the government of President Emmanuel Macron. The unions have rejected Macron's reform in large protests since December and say it will require people to work longer for a full pension. Macron has made some concession but said he won't abandon the reform. More than 100 riot police were seen cordoning the protesters throughout their march.
For me, we have a social welfare system which may not be perfect, but is a good one anyway. And I will do all I can to fight for the system, for public services which we have achieved through the strikes, thanks to the people who have fought. And I think if there's more than 60% of French people supporting the movement, even if they are not on a strike, it's more important to us. And maybe people find us crazy, but maybe they also want our social welfare system. And I will fight as much as I could to preserve the system. It's a very special movement, which at the same time has not reached an extent that I would have liked it to, but at the same time does not die, which continues through the other forms. And I think it will continue and it will not stop today.
And with that, we end our news brief, but you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to also join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.